In the ancient land of Sundara, where the mountains scraped the belly of heaven and the valleys held emerald clouds of forest, there ruled a king named Amarasimha. He was a monarch carved from pure ambition. His army stretched beyond the horizon, his treasury groaned with gold, and his name was spoken in murmurs of awe from the snow peaks to the distant sea. But inside his chest, a seed of arrogance had sprouted so thick and fast that it choked every breath of humility. Each morning, he stood on his balcony of polished moonstone, looking out at the great river Veda as it coiled through his kingdom like an enormous silver serpent. And he would whisper to himself, "I am the master of all I survey. Even this mighty river, it flows because I permit it."
The river Veda was not simply water. It was the lifeblood of the land, a sacred goddess in liquid form, ancient and patient beyond human measure. It fed the rice fields until they shone like green gold. It quenched the thirst of 1,000 villages. It carried temple flowers and funeral ashes, laughter and laments, all the way from the glacial womb of the high peaks to the waiting ocean. But the king saw only a wild thing to be tamed, a force to prove his greatness. One sun-scorched afternoon, he summoned his chief engineer, a clever but deeply cautious man named Varan. The king's voice echoed through the marble hall, each word a stone dropped into a still pond. "Varan, I desire a monument that will make the gods themselves envious. You will build a dam across the Veda, a wall of stone so immense that the river will pool at my feet like a tame garden pond. The world will know that even nature bows to King Amarasimha." Warren's face went the color of old ash. He cleared his throat and said, very carefully, "Your Majesty, the Veda is powerful beyond our reckoning. Its currents hide deep undercurrents, and the snowmelt from the high peaks comes with a fury older than kingdoms. To cage the river might bring a terrible answer." The king laughed, a cold, brittle sound that shattered against the pillars. "Answer? A river feels nothing. It is water, nothing more. Steel, stone, and my will shall hold it. Begin construction at once." And so, the work began. Trees that had stood for centuries were torn down. Boulders were torn from the heart of the hills. An army of laborers sweated beneath a punishing sun, their hammers ringing like desperate bells. The great dam rose, a crescent of granite and mortar blocking the valley, turning the river's wide silver path into a narrow, sullen trickle downstream. The king visited often, his crimson robes billowing like a conqueror's cape. "See?" he announced to his nobles, gesturing grandly. "The river quiet of the night, when the workers slept? The river's soul, which ancient storytellers say lives in every drop, was not angry. It was sorrowful. It did not wish to destroy, only to teach. And the lesson was already gathering, high in the peaks." Far up in the mountains, an unquiet season had begun. Days of unceasing rain swelled the glaciers, and a colossal weight of water was biding its time, murmuring in the ice. Then, one evening, under a sky bruised purple and black, the first rumble of distant thunder rolled across the hills like a war drum. The king, dining in his golden chamber among fragrant curries and sweet wines, paid no attention. The storm arrived not as gentle monsoon, but as a savage, roaring deluge. Rain hammered the palace roof like fists demanding entry. The river began to rise, not slowly, but with a deep subsonic groan that made the ground tremble. The water pressed its colossal chest against the dam's stone ribs. King Amarasimha was roused from sleep by frantic messengers, their torches spluttering, their voices cracked. "My lord, the river. It's overtopping the spillways. The dam. It trembles like a dying thing."
The king rushed to the parapets, his heart hammering with something that was not yet fear, but sheer indignation. "It dares to defy me? Strengthen the gates, add more stone, double the guard." But it was already too late. With a sound that tore the night apart, a long, sorrowful boom, followed by a crack like the spine of the earth breaking, the dam shattered. A churning wall of dark water crowned with white foam and torn trees hurled itself down the gorge. It swallowed the royal gardens in a single gulp, swept away the ornate bridges as if they were twigs, and surged toward the palace with the voice of 1,000 angry lions. Panic, raw and shrieking. The king stood frozen for 2 heartbeats, then fled. He lost his jeweled slippers in the sucking mud. His silk robes clung to him, drenched and impossibly heavy. He scrambled up a hill behind the palace with a handful of guards, gasping, bedraggled, his crown tilted absurdly over one eye. From that height, by the flicker of pale lightning, he watched his throne room become a swirling, muddy lake. The great teak throne, the symbol of his unshakable power, floated like driftwood, spun once, and vanished into the liquid darkness. He wanted to shout a command, but his throat closed around nothing. For the first time in his life, the king was utterly powerless, and the silence inside him was louder than the flood. Dawn crawled over the wreckage with an eerie, forgiving tenderness. The rain had stopped. The sun rose washed out and pale, as if the sky itself was exhausted. The river, still swollen and heavy with silt, was no longer a raging beast. It flowed past the ruins with a low, liquid murmur, almost gentle. King Amarasimha, barefoot, shivering, his fine clothes now stiff with dried mud, walked down to the water's edge alone. His arrogance lay in ruins alongside his palace. The mud squelched between his toes, grounding him in a way he had never known. He sat on a broken slab of the dam, his own vanity, now rubble, and stared into the brown, swirling current. And for the first time, he truly listened. And in the quiet lap and murmur of the water, he began to hear a voice, not with his ears, but somewhere deep in the well of his soul. It was the river, speaking in the language of ripples. The voice was not cruel. It was as old as time, as soft as silt, and full of a sorrowful kindness. "I am not your servant, little king. I was ancient when your ancestors were dust sailing on the wind, and I will flow long after your name is a whisper lost in the reeds. You tried to stop me, but you cannot stop life. You tried to hold me, but you can only hold what you truly understand. Do you see now? Do you feel it? Power is not the force that builds walls against the current. Power is the force that learns to move with the flow, to bend, to become part of something greater." The king's tears splashed into the water, merging with the Veda, and the salt of his pride dissolved. He understood.
He had never conquered the river. He had only barricaded himself from its wisdom. True strength was never domination. It was harmony. The river had not sought to destroy him. It had simply followed its nature, and his own swollen pride had placed him squarely in its path. Days later, the king, visibly transformed, called his people together, not from a high balcony, but standing with bare feet on the very same muddy bank, his voice roughened by emotion. "I have been a fool," he said, and the silence of the crowd was deeper than any applause. "I tried to chain the mother who feeds us. From this day on, we will not block the river. We will work with it. We will build channels that welcome its floods, reservoirs that share its blessings evenly among every village, every field. Not to conquer, but to cooperate." And the people, who had lost much but still loved their land, saw a new light in his eyes. The bitterness washed away, replaced by a quiet, steady hope. They began the new work without fear, and the river Veda, as if pleased, calmed and became a partner. Its seasonal floods now replenished the soil instead of stealing lives, whispering softly through the canals like a lullaby. The king never rebuilt his grand palace on the old, cursed site. He constructed a modest home with wide, open windows that always faced the river, so he would never forget. Every dawn, he stood there in the quiet, not to survey a possession, but to greet a teacher. A king who once tried to silence the water had finally learned to listen. And so the river became the kingdom's greatest guardian, not because it was tamed, but because a proud heart finally bent its knee, not its will, against the flow. The lesson ripples through time like sunlight on moving water. A dam can hold back the flood, but it can never hold wisdom. True greatness lies in knowing when to stand firm and when to let go. And humility, like a mighty river, is strongest when it runs deep and utterly free.